Hey Hamida,
Hi, Asius. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. It's morning here. I'm from here, from Quebec, Canada. And what about
You
you?
seem to have an echo.
Okay, thank you. So I will start presenting myself. Person who don't know me, I am Hamida. I'm cloud solution architect, working in Quebec government. I am also Microsoft MVP, Microsoft MCT, Docker Captains. I'm here to present with Azures how we can debug C# console application. I'm coming from developer world, so I know how it's important to debug, test your application before going to production. Could you present yourself, Azures?
Yeah, my name's Pages. I'm a Microsoft MVP just like Hamida, and I'm a freelance .NET developer. Work mainly in mobile and IoT space with .NET, with Xamarin Maui, and things like Nano Framework and the likes on IoT devices, electronics. We're not doing that. You'll find me at 40,000 feet flying an aircraft for a large commercial airline in the UK. So I kind of have two jobs, but yeah, I'm here to help kind of see if we can learn some more about debugging in VS Code, which is an awesome product.
Yeah. So I am today with Edges, and we have Kathy in as moderator. If you have any questions, please you can ask her by chat. Say hi before, and in the end, we have a series of C sharp, and this is the last one. It's about debugging, how we can debug our solution. We highly recommend to take the exam in the end, so it's a really nice exam in collaboration with Free Code Camp. Say hi, you can say hi, please, and ask your question with chat. We will try to answer you during our session. And let's start with learning objective. Could you tell me how we will talk about today? What are the most important thing to talk about debugging and testing?
I think we're going to cover the objectives that are there that are part of the learning path. But we're going to look at some code in VS Code that's part of the sample package that's downloaded as part of the Learn module. And then we're going to go through how you debug your code, how you make a breakpoint, how you look at the codes, and then kind of beyond that, we're going to look in at how you use an exception to clean up your code and make it more readable and make the error tracking when it's actually deployed live, so that the users get a nice experience. So you can trap an error and recover from the error rather than just crash the app, which is quite important, especially when you're dealing with things like mobile and IoT, like I do, because you'll just crash the app on the user's device.
Yeah.
Windows and Linux and Mac OS are a little bit more forgiving. They'll might pop up an alert message that says this has happened, but on mobile devices and IoT devices, it just crashes the on a mobile will crash the app. On an IoT device, it might lock the device up and someone has to go and unplug it and plug it back in again. So we'll go through that, and then at the end there's going through the guided project. At the end of that, there's a knowledge check as well. So we'll do that. I think Hamida's put all the questions into a PowerPoint slide here, so we can get you all kind of these summaries A, B, or C. And then there's a challenge project at the end, which goes a little bit deeper, using the skills you've learned during the module to make your kind of enhance those skills and see if you can solve the challenge at the end as well. So I think today we're just going to be going through the guided project, sorry, and the knowledge check, and then you be left to the challenge to yourself as you go through the learn module. But yeah.
Yeah, interesting session. So you can just scan this QR code to have the content of all the session. We recommend to start by the first part, creating, for example, C sharp application, because this is, as I said before, the last part is debugging and testing an application. We see how we can use Visual VS Code to debug our solution, which tools can have with VS Code that help developer to debug the solution and test it.
Just want
We will.
just want to jump in there. The link that Learn Live code link is not correct, and I think the QR code goes
Okay.
to a
We can share
previous
that by chat.
module.
Yes. Yeah.
So the actual one I've just put into our behind the
Okay.
scenes chat. Yeah, there you go. It's on the bottom of your screens now,
Already. Yeah.
down there.
It's in the. Yes. It's already shared.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah, so don't follow the QR code to take you to a previous session. I think we've just got an older slide there by
Yes.
mistake.
And here you can see the content of the learning path here. So it's Debug C Sharp console application, the last one. And we recommend to start with writing your first C Sharp if you already start using C Sharp. So you can start with all of this and the model of this learning path. And we start by reviewing the principles. We have implementation. It's all the objectives that already presented before. So, and we finish with a simple challenge, project challenge. Now, see that the content of learning path, you find the link already, share it. And let's go back to our first part. Let's start with the first one, that is review the principle of code debugging and exception handling. In this part, we have some theory part, because we will talk about why we need to debug, why we need to when we need to test our application. Who do that is developer. We need to build a test team, for example. But before to start working on some exercises that we will share today, and in the end we have a challenge project, we need to have at least Visual Studio Code that already installed in your machine with a C Sharp extension. You need to have to install the C Sharp extension. You can see how we do that in one of learning, but after maybe it's just we can share with us how we can install the extension. We add it if it's true. If you need to do that, and you need to at least to have the some knowledge about C Sharp to be able to work the examples. So because we start with some simple examples just to see how we can debug this. And let's go on now. We will try to see how we can debug code, what is debugging, the benefits of doing that, who do that, and how we can do. We can use some try catch for some exception, so it allows us at least to don't have any interruption in our system, in our code. Applications keep running and keep catching the different errors that can receive. So our agenda, so it's about what is testing, what is the difference between testing, debugging, exception handling, how we can use the code debugger, um, what is exception, how we can catch the exception inside an application, the basic knowledge to start with. And as a developer, I said I started as a developer. When you start any application, I write the code. It can be any simple code, but sometimes we are facing some error, and we need to have a specific process to verify our code, it works well or not. We know that we are able to use some unit tests, for example, unit tests to test our work, but in the code itself, we need to add some, let's say, some instruction, some process to be able to not have any interruption. So you suppose you are developing an application, you'd like to add some logic or any other features. It can be complex. It can be complex application. So you are able to build, run your solution, and sometimes you can have some unexpected results, and our solution can be interrupted. We can have some problems. How we can do that? How we can catch this solution? If Visual Studio Code is allow us to debug at least solutions. Sometimes we get some error, we don't understand where is the problem. So we are able to debug our code using Visual Studio Code tools. So here we will start seeing how what is the difference between testing, debugging, how we can do handling exception. Let's
The,
start
the
by
good
the first part.
the good
Yes.
thing about that as well is the fact that when certainly when I started out as a software developer many years ago, there wasn't a debugger. So you'd write printf statements. I got this far in my program, and printf, and it was used kind of leaving yourself a breadcrumb trail of how far you got in your code. You still have to do that on microelectronics when you're dealing with IoT devices, because there isn't a debugger that can run on your hardware. So you have like an LED that might flash 3 times to say that I've got this far in my code. Whereas if you're using a debugger, as you'll see in a wee while, you can actually step through your code and stop and hover over a variable to see its value and the like. So it is a really, really key and strong kind of skill set you need to sort of build as a developer, because you can't leave your bugs for the QA and test team and relying on your unit tests to find your bugs. You need to be able to find them and fix them yourself in the code. So yeah, just wanted to kind of cover that as well. I think you're muted there, Hamida. Are you there? I think she's muted. I can't see her lips moving, so she's not talking either. There you go. You're still muted at the moment, Hamida. Anna, while we're waiting for Hamida just to sort her tech ramblings out there, do you want to pop across to my share my screen, and I'll go through the actual Learn Live contents. This is the Learn Live contents when you followed that link that was shared earlier. And it'll take you out. We're up to part 6, as you can see here. And if you want to go through the other parts, you can jump back to those as well. It gives you an idea of who this is kind of really for. But anyone really that's kind of learning software as a skill can go through this. We're up to part 6, which is this part here. The first ones will teach you, getting started with C#, running a simple console application, adding some logic, if, for each, do while loops, that sort of thing, was covered in section 3. Section 4 is working with data. 5 is creating methods, so they're like chunks of code that get reused again and again and again. So that is section 5, and then we're up to section 6, which is how to debug. Because if you've managed to get through the first 5 sections right without writing a bug in your code, you're a better developer than me. We do need to learn how to debug. It's at the end, because obviously to debug code, you need to be able to look at code, and if you're going to look at code, you need to understand it. So that's why towards the end is the section you need to cover. It gives you some prerequisites as well as on the slide there. And so you need to have Visual Studio installed and configured for C# development. So you need to have the add-ons. I need to implement your business logic and statements, etc. there. You can click Start here, which will take you through the principles of coding and debugging. And you get all the XP as you do with all the Microsoft Learn modules and points make prizes. So you need to make sure you get all the XP. It's gamified, which is really good, and I do love that element of the Microsoft Learn path. You come down and it gives you an idea of the time it's going to take to complete the module, this Learn module here. So this takes about an hour and 20 minutes. I tend to use a screen reader, which I've set to quite a fast pace, which will read through the screen a lot quicker, because a block of text to me, my eyes glaze over. So I sometimes get the modules done a little bit quicker than the time that's indicated there. But each section, you see they're broken down nice and short segments. The idea being is you can do it in a break between your work. If you're learning this at work, you can have a lunch break or a tea break, and you can have a quick go at the next section. But the part we're going to do today is a guided project. Debug and handle exceptions in a C# console application using Visual Studio Code. It's meant to take 50 minutes. It's got 6 units, and that's the section we're going to go through. There's a bit of an overview as well, which shows how it's broken down. You can see I've gone through this a couple of times just to be ready for everyone today, and we should be back. I'm not sure if Amida's back with us again on the stream.
Yeah. Sorry, I guess some interruption. Sorry for that.
I'm not sure if you want to continue with your slides.
For explaining that. Yeah. Thank you for explaining all of this. So I think it's really interesting to learn more about every part, the time that we need to learn more about that. I know session is 20 minutes, but we try to cover all the topics, and specifically we try to work with you the exercises, the demo, and the end. Maybe we start with you the project challenges. So let's go back to just talking about testing, developer responsibility. Do you think the debugging and the test is only the responsibility of developer, or we need another team to build? So in the software development process, we need to add a lot of testings, because software testing has its own specialized software maybe tester, and here in our case the tester can play an important role in development of large application. We can't just work on application and deliver it in production. We need to test the application, and developers sometimes are face some problems, so they need to debug more. So we have an even approaches to the software development process that is based on testing, and we call that test driven development also. And software testing can be organized under a specific test. We can have a unit test, we can have integration test. It depends from the different step where the software is during in the process of software development. So we can work more about functional testing, as we said, unit test, integration system, and we can work more specific on non-functional testing like security testing. Security, we know it's important always to
Yeah.
secure our application. We have two parts: security, performance. This is what impact after our application, because it will impact the customer and the user of the solution. Usability, simple using, we are able to use simply our application or not, and if we can use this application in our laptop, in mobile. Here we talk about compatibility testing. So all of this are different types of testing, and we have software tester is working on that. Developer have need to test their own code, maybe unit test, integration test. So it depends from the solution. So here we have the software testing developer specific responsibility related to the test. And if you'd like to debug our solution in Visual Studio Code, for example, VS Code, let's say, we have different tools. This is an example. I don't know if you'd like to show an example for us, just to see how we can debug solution, or we can leave that in the exercise if you want.
I think there's quite a bit of it in the exercise, so
Okay,
we can
it's
cover it in
good.
the exercise if you wish.
Okay, this is an example here, list, and we see from the list, sorry for that, but we see from the list we have an error. The developer is, if we compile that, we see that in our example after in the exercise, that we will get an error here because we have a list of, we try to get the limit of the list, and here we have a limitation of the list, so we get an error. We don't have any value in student in the count in the list, so we need to add the -1 for in this example, for example, to be able to let this work, this code working. And here the debugger, he will say we get an error, and sometimes the error is not clear for a developer. This is why we need to add other things. We need to specify more to catch our to handle our exception, to get a specific, let's say, messages. We can personalize the messages inside an exception. So we see this is what we covered today about debugging and testing. So this is an example related to code,
So
and
this
yeah,
error we would get here because we're using student count, because you get the
we
length of the
don't
number
have
of
a value.
students,
Yeah,
which would be 4.
yeah,
In the error, we'd be trying to get element 4 of the array, but because the arrays are 0 indexed and it
yes,
starts at 0 and at 1,
exactly.
you'll be getting an element that doesn't exist. So you get an array out of bounds exception, and that is an exception that will be thrown. And all it is because you've forgotten to 0 index. And I do it all the time. I've been writing software for 30 years now, and I still do it, and I still forget this simple thing. And this is where a debugger steps in and helps you find the error. And say, oh yeah, I forgot to take 1 off the count number. So it's
Yes,
easy to do. I still do it. any developer, that develops code day in, day out, makes errors and mistakes in their code and needs a debugger,
Yes.
which is why it's a really important skill to learn.
It happens. So we
Yeah,
sometimes we make these kind of errors. We forget that the length it can be 4. We start with 0, so it should be 3 in this case. Yes, it happens. But the important thing that when we make these errors, it's normal as the developer. If developers start coding, they start touching C sharp, start learning to make this all. The important thing that we are able to see to resolve that in faster ways. So we have the different tools that we are able to use to help out the developer to resolve this problem without taking any time, long time. And another way is handling the exception. So we have errors that occur during the application runtime. We know that happens always, and it's better to handle this exception. And sometimes in one of learning in our learning modules, we will see how we can personalize our exception. We see an example for that, how we can personalize exception. We add some messages, so it helps us at least to have an idea about the problem that occurred during the running of our solution. And after the exception is managed in the code in this case. So handling exception, it's really the responsibility of the developer, because we add that the try and the catch. We add try and the catch, we catch the solution. After, it's the developer who need to add that. It's not the tester. It's not the testing phase. It's debug. It's related to a solution, something related to the writing the code. So we need always use try and catch the error, try to catch not generic error, try to catch specific error to be able to know what happens in our solution if something if we get an error. We have at least a specific error. We know what we need to do to resolve this error.
yeah,
So in this part, as you see, it's really theoric part. We talk about debugging, testing, and we know now that's the difference between them, and the different categories about testing, functional, non-functional. We know security and performance. It's related to non-functional. We have unit tests, integration. So we have different types of tests that we are able to do. So we talk about producing a quality of code. It's the responsibility of the developer, not only the tester. Can you add something more?
yeah. I'll add to it. When we work in a big team, obviously when you're starting out and you're just learning C sharp, your debugging is to help you learn your code, but also to fix your code when you're working on small projects like the sample we're going to show today. But when you work in a big team on a really large project, maybe you join as a junior developer. It's not just you and the code that you write, but you can use the debugging tools within Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code to help you understand the code that you're trying to learn, so that you can make the edits and changes that are needed. But also,
Yeah.
all the testing that goes on is, some of it is automated. Unit tests and the likes can be automated as part of your build tools. So on very large projects, when I work with clients on huge projects, there's massive amount of build tasks that are automated for testing. There will be unit tests, etc. Then you'll have a QA team that will also be doing testing. You have usability testers. There'll be your testers. For me, when I'm doing a mobile app, it'll be my family. If I'm doing a small app for myself, I put it on their phones and they test it as well. So there's lots of different kind of types of testing, and you can sometimes fall into an area where actually I really enjoy it. QA testing, where I'm trying to kind of force an error and seeing if the developers have thought of a way of solving these errors that maybe in the array looking at element 99 instead of element 3, for example. But it all starts with learning C sharp, and it all starts with learning how to use debugging tools, so you can debug your own code in your own environments locally on your device before you get into these bigger teams and
Yep.
the bigger elements. But yeah, it's a hugely important tool. And don't think that the debugger within Visual Studio Code is where it ends. When you do get that obscure error message, I had one going through this learn module because I didn't have Visual Studio Code set up correctly on my machine. I got an obscure error message and I couldn't work it out. So I copied literally cut and paste the error message into Google Bing, and found some helpful hints on Stack Overflow and also on the Visual Studio Code
Mm.
Q&A section, and which helped me resolve the problem. I'll point out what my problem was when we get to VS Code in a little while, but how you go about it isn't just debugger; it's about how you kind of use those, your Google food, as it's called in the developer world, of solving your problems. But yeah,
Okay, maybe if you'd like to finish this part, let's go to knowledge check to see if it's clear for all today. Please
yeah,
use chat.
yeah.
We have some question for you because I was checking the question. We didn't receive any question. Don't know if we have
I've not
some
seen
questions.
any
No,
yet.
not.
Yeah,
So it's our turn to ask a question in this case to see if it's clear for you before going the second part, because we now it's theory. We talk about debugging, testing. It's clear. So let's start by the first one. What is code debugging? So select A, B, or C. So we see if it's really clear or no. You
we've
have,
got answers in the chat. I'm not
yes, use
sure
chat.
where everyone's using it.
Yeah. So we have 5 seconds to start because we need to cover a lot of things before. So this is the answer. I don't know.
There's a
Yeah.
few people
They
putting
start writing. Yeah, it's
yeah,
fine.
there's a few people putting B in
Yeah.
the chat.
Okay, yes, it's B. It's a process to isolate and fix issues in code logic. So yes, I think it's right. It's fine for this. The next one, who is responsible for software testing? Is it software developer, tester, or developer and tester? It's who is responsible. Let's check. I think they have the right answer. It's C. Let's
Yep.
go to the
Yeah,
third
everyone's putting
question.
C.
Could you tell me about third question? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's obviously, that before your code gets out into production, you want to make sure the developer, the person that wrote it, you, for example, has made sure you're happy with it and
Yeah.
there's no bugs. But then obviously your test team needs to make sure that they've tested it as well, to make sure that no bugs get in front of the user, the end user. But yeah.
Yeah.
So
They
question
start.
3 then, we've moved on to what happens if an exception isn't managed in code? And it seems to be there's quite a lot of people putting C as the answer.
Yeah,
Um,
it's right. Yeah,
yeah.
because the application generates an error message and closes it will be exit. So yes, I think people answered very. Let's go to the second learning part. We already explained how it works since in the Microsoft Learning. This is the second part. We recommend to go back to the first part to read more about debugging, testing before passing the exam that we recommend to do it after the session. So let's go to see how we can examine the code debugger approach to debugger codes.
Okay.
And here, every developer need to deal with code bugs, something that we know all as a developer. This is the life, it's a part of life of all developers. Sometimes we are able to fix this bug quickly. Sometimes we need to write code besides. Sometimes we need to fix it using another. We get another issue sometimes. So it depends from developer to another. Depends from the code, from the bug itself. So when we have a bug in our code, it can be tempting to try to direct approach. We are able. The first look to do is to try to scan, to think about the issue. Sometimes take 30 seconds, sometimes take more time. So we need at least to see again our source code. Specifically, it's if the bugs come from another developer, we need to understand more about the code to try to debug out the code to see how we can fix it. Takes time. So reading the code, the first thing to do. We see here we need sometimes to add some console write line just to get a specific result to see if the bug comes before, we need to fix after. So we have multiple ways to try to fix our bug. And in our case here, this is the let's say the normal process to debug and try to fix your a bug that is we have inside the code. Um, we need to use sometimes some tools. If you are running your code through the debugger, you are able to fix it quickly because you can follow the code, you can see the result in the code, and the primary benefit of using a debugger that you can watch your program running. So you debug and you are running the code line by line. We see that with after the exercise, how we can debug our code, how we can see the result, how we can add some conditions inside when we are trying to debug our code. So here, some tools that help us to fix our work quickly. Read the code, and we try to use a tool to debug our bug, to debug our solution to fix the bug. So this approach will minimize the chance of guessing wrong. So it's more simple than passing the day. Sometimes I sometimes pass 2 days thinking about bug because I'm not able to fix it. It's really complex. It depends from application to another. So this is an example of debugger. We see that demo after in Visual Studio Code with a simple code, and you see how we can debug, which tools we are able to use, and really how we can do the debug. So code debugging, what is the best approach to debug your application. We use sometimes console dot write line just inside the code just to see the result of specific lines. So we are able to see, okay, we are in the step one, step two. So my problem is between the first part, the second part. So it depends from developer to another to debug the code. Do you have any other ideas, other tricks that help us to debug our code or resolve some problems inside the code?
Yeah, I've found actually that when I hit a bug that I've spent maybe 30 minutes on, 40 minutes on, and I'm really stuck. Getting up and going for a walk, going
Yes.
make another cup of coffee, take the dogs for a walk, walk away from your computer, and do something different. And your brain, it's amazing, this human brain that we have, that we'll work on it away, and and you'll come back to the computer and you have a solution or something new to try. If you're there and you keep going through the same loop and looking at your code again and again and again, nothing's going to jump out at you. You step away from it. When you walk back, you 9 times out of 10 see the problem. It will just jump out at you. If that's not working for you, getting someone else to, we call it rubber ducking, getting someone else to look over your code, or explaining your code to somebody new. A family member. That doesn't need to be a developer. Just the pure act of explaining your code to them helps your brain go through. Because to explain it to a non-developer, you need to be able to use kind of non-developer terms, and in doing so, you've got to simplify what you're trying to explain. In
Yeah.
simplifying it, you again 9 times out of 10 find a solution to your problem. So there is all these different kind of tools that you use as a developer, not just the debugging tools, but also how you Google things, Bing things, how you kind of talk through problems with another person, rubber ducking, getting up and going for a walk, tends to help as well. So yeah, there's all these ways and tricks that you learn over time of debugging,
Yeah.
but it all starts with learning how to kind of use the tools that are in the IDE, the integrated development environment that you're going to use, VS Code or Visual Studio, if you're using the Microsoft tools.
Yeah, exactly. So we have now some knowledge check just to see if it's clear for them, this small part about debugging using tools. And so the first question is, what is debugger for you? So it's software tool used to observe and control the execution. It's a program that we need to generate the code. It's a tool. So what is the correct explanation, the right explanation of a debugger? Let's check the chat here. A, yes, it's A.
Quite a few people with
Right.
A.
Yes, it's more close. A, it's really a software tool used to observe and control execution flow of program. And today we see that Visual Studio Code integrates a great debugger with the different tools that help the developer to debug the code. And it can be used not only for C#, for other languages. This is also one of the good point of Visual Studio Code. The Question 5 is related to why is the primary benefit of using a debugger? Do you think it's really we have benefits to use a debugger for you as a developer? Let's say it's a debugger is helping developer to write fast code. Uh, you can check one of that, enable developer to watch their application running, follow, you try to check the closed, let's say, look, the closed part, the closed definition related to the benefits of using a debugger.
Here we
Let's
can
check the
mostly
chat.
B.
Yes, I think people are already understand the importance of using a debugger, the benefits of using that. What do you think? What the most important feature of a debugger? We leave also participant to contribute. What do you think? Code generation, observation of your program state, automatic bug fixing. What do you think? The right question. We wait after you can say what's the right answer in this case.
Quite a few people saying B again.
Yes, exactly. It's B again. Yeah, I think we have B also from the
Yeah.
participants. Seems clear for all. We focus about the benefits. Another question is what is the best way to find the root cause of a bug? It's running your application different data, breadcrumbing view control dot write line. Example here, so we can add specific message in your code or using a debugger.
Hopefully, everyone puts C.
I see. Yeah. Yes. Right. It's C. Yeah. Yeah. Now we see more deeper how we can examine exception and how exception are used. Okay, we talked about which tools we are able to use to debug our solution. Now let's go inside the code what we need to use to catch our exception and how we see. So we already learned before about the error, how we call exception, try catch, and now let's see how we can do that. So before starting talking about exception, what is exception? Exception, it's not only for C# application, can be for any other type, any other language as application. It's really for C#, it's an error inside a program at runtime are propagated through the program by using a mechanism called exception. In this case, we can see that exception, it can be an error inside the code, and we need to understand what is the exceptions related to for example, we try to open a file, it's related to opening the file. We need to read, for example, data from the file. Is it related to opening or the data itself, converting, for example, specific things? So we have different types of exception, and inside the code we need to try to handle the maximum of exception to be able to focus more on our error, and the exception will handle this error without making any interruption in our system. So you can use exception in your code without a deep understanding of classes sometimes. And let's go how we can use when we use throw, when we use catch exception. Throw and catch can be uh, in our case here, we can be explained by evaluating the definition of an exception. So because we use try in the code, you have your code, and throw the exception, so to throw the error, the type of an error. So it depends from the exception to another.
There was a
Yes.
question that was asked earlier
Yeah.
that was, I was just going to see it here. It says, I've heard that excessive use of try catch is not a good practice. Maybe we can discuss when not to use try catch. So, what do you think about using try catch? I mean, I've worked on code bases where it's littered everywhere, and I've also worked on code bases where it's hardly used when it should be used. How do you feel about the use of try catch blocks?
For me, if you use try catch, it's a good practice because we are able to catch the error, so we are able to focus more about the error, what we are the error. Specifically, if we use the in the catch a specific, not just generic exception, because we get the same error that the debugger can give to us, but we are able to focus more about a specific exception. And this is for me is a good practice inside the code, at least. It helped developer to see and to see what's type of the error, and specifically we don't have an interruption inside. If you it's a service, it's some application, we don't have an interruption, it's an error catched, and we are able to show those error after in the in as an answer to the user, for example. So it depends. For me, it's a good practice. Why it's not a good practice? So good.
Yeah, I'm much the
Discuss.
same. I think it's a good practice to use, but if you're going to use it, it's a really good idea to use, catch, argument, no exception catch, that sort of thing, rather than just a generic catch. And
Yeah,
if you are going to catch the error, make sure you do something with it. Don't just have an empty catch block. It's things like empty catch blocks or just a generic error catcher that just
yeah,
puts up the error message on the screen and alert box, which confuses your users. It's things like that give the try catch kind of element of C sharp a bad name because it's been misused. So if you're going to use it, as we'll show in a wee while when we go through the module, use it in a correct way, and you can use it liberally across your code base.
yeah,
But try not to use an empty catch block or a default catch block that catches everything, unless you're using it to log the error so you can work out what
mm,
exceptions are being thrown. So at a later date, you can then be a bit more bespoke with your error catch blocks and
yeah,
handle it, a little bit
yes.
neater.
After we will see an exercise, we will use try catch, and you see that's really simple to catch our error using this try catch. We see some examples that where we try to have an error, so to see the exception. We see that's really important to do that. It's best practice, not the opposite. Okay. So we talked about the exception, we talked about how we can throw exception using try catch. This is what we covered in this small part also. Let's go to the knowledge check. We know that we have a lot of knowledge check. It helps us to see if it's clear or not. We try to move faster in the presentation so we have the time to see the examples, and you will see that try catch is the best thing to do.
Yep.
Debugger, how we can debug the different tools inside Visual Studio Code. This is what we covered today with a project challenge in the ends. So what is the purpose of catching an exception in C sharp? Why we need to catch an exception? As it's ready to ignore errors that occur in program, take corrective action when an error occurs in a program, or we'd like just to generate additional error in a program. This is fun. Answer. So let's see the
Most
answers.
people put in B.
B, yes. I think people ask already answered B. Yes, it's to take corrective action when an error occurs. So here we take an action when we get an error. So we are able to catch our error. We can display to user a specific, let's say, page, for example, specific web page. So it depends from an error to another, but it allows us at least to not interrupt the solution. Can developer access the contents of an exception at runtime? A, B, C. Let's check here. What do you think? I just
I'm just trying to, yeah, I agree with everyone else actually. So yeah, going with B.
yeah. I think people also answered by B. Exception can be accessed and used to take corrective action. This is why we use the
So the idea there is
it's
to
yeah.
is to catch the exception and rather
You
than the app
get more
crashing,
detail.
do something with it, display an error message to the user, or retry opening that file,
Yeah.
or do something subtly different in your code flow to make sure you don't crash the app or give the user a bad experience.
Yeah. Exactly. Another question here. And it's about what happens when execution of C sharp application result in the system error. Does the program crash and closes? When exception is created and thrown by the .NET runtime, do you think that? Or the error is silently ignored and the program continues to run?
I think we're getting quite a few B's again. So
I will save
yeah,
people. Yeah, people
yeah,
also answered B. That's the right question. So an
yeah.
exception is created and thrown, yes, by the .NET runtime.
But,
So
but
the goal is not to keep program running even we have an error. No, but we need to have an idea about the error and to try
yeah.
to move to do
And
something.
this goes back to what we said a few minutes ago. If you don't use try catch, then answer A would be correct because the program would
Don't.
crash
Yeah,
because it just throw
it
the
would
error out. It
crash.
wouldn't get caught anywhere and it crash. Um, if you do use try catch correctly, then answer B is correct. But if you use try catch and you use an empty catch block with nothing in it, the exception would just be
Exactly.
eaten and the program will carry on running. But you're not generating an error, you're not catching it correctly, you're not helping the user through the problem. You're not logging the error out so that your team can look at why are we generating hundreds of errors in this one web page or in this one application.
Exactly.
So using it correctly and you'll get the answer B there. Use it incorrectly, you might get A or C. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good idea.
Yes, I like this question because it allows us to talk more. It's better than having definitions, so
Yeah,
we
yeah,
can share our experience. We can share different points, and it help you after maybe in the exam also. It's more clear
yeah.
with questions here, and we see after with demo it will be more clear in it's better. So, what is the relationship between the type of exception and the information it contains? So, is the type of exception and information it contains are unrelated, or the type of exception determines the information it contains, or the information contained in an exception determines the type of exception. So we need just a type, we need just all information, or we don't have really it's unrelated information. I think. What do you think? We see.
I'm going to go with B. So
Yes,
the type
people.
exception says what information is in it because
Exactly.
that's why it's always really important to pick the type of exception. So null exception, that sort of thing will have certain information in it. Argument out of range exception have a different set of data inside the exception as well. So so picking the exception is quite an important task as well. But you get used to seeing the same ones again and again.
Okay, yes, exactly. So I think it's the last one for our knowledge check. So we finished that. Oh, we still have other questions. Uh, okay, I think we already did that.
I think you've
Okay.
done these
Oh,
already.
okay.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
latest. I already did that. So sorry for that. It's about the debugger. We come back about that. So now let's go back to summarize why we talked about debugging, exception handling, and we go to the next one that is sorry for that we go to the next one that is related to implement the Visual Studio Code debugging tools, how we do that. Now we move to our let's say the exercises, our projects, and what we need, as we said before, Visual Studio Code that include C Sharp. We can show you how we can integrate the C Sharp extension, basic knowledge about writing code using C Sharp. If we just start with C Sharp, as I said before, you can start with the first module. We have 5 other learning paths that allows you to learn more about how you start with C Sharp, what is C Sharp, how you can create a new project in Visual Studio. So if you just start for this one, it requires that you already have the knowledge to create a project. So let's go to see how we can what is Visual Studio Code debugger interface. After we run the exercise, we go faster about this one.
Yep.
After we see, we go faster because we need to move more about application. Quickly spotting and fixing bug help you release stable code faster, debugging, testing. So it's important. And now we talk more specific, more about Visual Studio Code. The first part was more generic about debugging, testing, who do that, how we use try and catch. In C Sharp, it's used also for other languages. So it's more generic. Now it's more specific, and we use Visual Studio Code to show how we can use debugger. Let's take a look on Visual Studio Code debugger
Yeah.
interface.
So if we go across to my screen share, we'll see this is
Yeah.
the modules for the guided
Okay.
project. So, like we said above, we've gone through the elements before, which is what Hamid has been talking about recently. So if we go into, we start the module. The introduction just gets you all set up and explains what we're going to do. So in this, we're going to talk about the try catch block, and if you've gone through the modules previous to this, it's talking about setting up a retail application that works out effectively it's a till in a shop, and a person wants to buy something, so they give you money, and then you have to work out, do you have enough change in the till to give them the change, and you need to keep track of how much money is in the till and make sure that you can work your way through, or the till can work out how much money and change to give. Has the person given you enough cash for the transaction that's being made? So I'm not going to read all this text. That's something you come through when you do the module yourself. So we need to make sure that we've got Visual Studio Code configured. We need to make sure we have the ability to develop and implement a business logic, and need to implement a try catch box as well. So we've done this, so we'll unlock that, and I've moved on from this, and if I go back to
Right.
so prepare is the next section. So what we need to do is the application makes calls out to the make change methods, and what we'll do is we'll go through this in the section rather than reading the text. You can read it just as quickly as I can. What we'll do is we'll go out and get the code. So first thing we need to do, download the zip, so we can get the lab files from here. And what that will do is download a zip file onto your hard drive. You need to unzip that onto your local machine to somewhere where you can use it. A little trick here: if you're new to developing and you've not done much in the way of development, Windows has a limit on how many folders deep it can go before it starts to get a bit upset about being able to reach folders. So what a lot of developers do is on their C drive, they'll create a folder which is the development folder, and they put everything in there. So you don't have, /Windows/this/user/cliff///////////////////////////// and then you're 20 folders deep before you get to your folder which has got your working. It's always a good idea just to have it on your C drive, and that's what I and a lot of friends that developers do as well. So we'll get that once you've unzipped and extracted it. It even explains how to unzip a folder there if you can't do that, and copy it to it says to your Windows desktop folder. I strongly believe that you should copy it to a folder that's more closer to your C drive. And then you need to open up in Visual Studio Code. So if we go out to Visual Studio Code, which is here, and we go File, Open Folder, you can see that I've got the guided project here, and I'm going to select that folder, and it will open up, and you'll see here that we have a README, the license, and then a final and a starter folder. Starter is where we're going to start, and final is just there if you get stuck and you want to peek the answer. Hopefully you don't. Hopefully you can work your way through it. But if you want to peek at the answer, then you can look at the program there and see what is happening in the final version of the code. What you should have once you complete the project work through. So if we look at the code here, so we've got a comment block at the top, which explains what is this application is going to, or this console app is going to do. So as I say, the till includes some bills in denominations $1, $5, $10, and $20, and we use that to provide the customer with change during the transaction. So the item costs is randomly generated number between $2 and $49, and the customer offers some money for payments, and then your program needs to determine the number of bills in each denomination to give as change, and have they given you enough cash to pay for the item they're trying to purchase. So if they give you kind of $30 and they're trying to pay for something that is $42, obviously that's not enough cash, and you need to say to the user, you need to give us more cash to make this transaction. You need to keep track of the money that's in the till and the different denominations, because you don't want your app to say give the purchaser a $20 bill when there's no $20 bills in the till. So you need to keep track of that as well. And you need to make sure there's a safety check to make sure the amount of money in the till is performed in the main program. So we have this is top level programming, and the idea behind this this version of C programming is the fact you don't get caught up in the main and all the other elements to go with. So it's a lot easier, it's a lot cleaner code to look at as a new developer and someone who's starting out new. So we have setting up some results, so read results, a boolean to use test data, and that is just a true false. It's clearing the console, so it's blank and empty, and then we're setting up our till with an array of 4 elements, and we go through, and then we register the daily starting cash. So we're putting the number of notes into the till at the beginning of the day. So there's going to be $51 bills, $25 bills, $10 bills, and 5 $20 bills. Should give a total of $350. You can see what we've done here in our array. And then we set up some test data. These are purchases that have been made. So $6 purchase, 10, 17. And this here would be, normally in a bigger project, you break that into a unit test. But here we're just doing it in the code to get through as well. So then we load the till in the morning, and we start by starting cash, and we pass it in the cash till, which we set up here, which has got our denominations of $1, $5, $10, and $20 that are currently in the till. And then we print out the statement of the till, and that is what the console write line is doing there. And expected till value should be what we should have in the till as well. And this is here is our random generator that we talked about earlier. So the random number, the reason you put in your random number is you put a seed. If you hover over there, you can see it says random, and it's just a seed, which is a value you put in there. And the seed is such that whenever you run the program, it's going to be different things. Otherwise, random will always, even though it says it's random, it'll always generate the same number. So you give it a seed that is different every time you run the program. Quick way of doing that is just taking the ticks from your datetime.now and just converting it to an int. That's a quick way of doing it. You could use whatever you see as fit. And then if we're using test data, we set the transactions up with the test data, and then we go through. And while we've still got transactions, and you remember up here, we had the different number of transactions. So while that array is still got elements in it, we'll keep running this code below, and we're going to take an element out of the transactions because now we want to make the array shorter. And then we take a random value between 2 and 20 and make that the cost. And then we go through and we can work out how many 1s, 5s, 10s, and 20s we need to give to the user. So what they're using, to make the payments. So they're making a purchase with the cost and how many 20s, 10s, 5s, and 1s they're using. And you can see there, we're just using the percent operator, which if the cost, if I scroll over here, if the value is 1, then I to cost is odd. So the value is 0, I to cost is even. So what that modulus operator does is just returns true or false, or 1 or 0, because we divided by 2.
Yeah. We get a question from the participant: is using breakpoints the best way of debugging? Maybe is the best time to show the debug feature in Visual Studio, just how we can use run, debug, how we can use breakpoint, and we give an answer for that also. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to come on to that. I was going to quickly show the code and then show the breakpoints as well. So
we know that your Visual Studio code include a lot of user interface features. It's really simple to use, but how we run different elements, so we can do that now live.
Yeah, we can do. I was just going to quickly look through the code so they understand what they're seeing, and then, as I say, bit down here is transaction succeeding, transaction unsuccessful. So we go back out to the learn environment. So now we've got this. So now we have our Visual Studio Explorer is this bar at the side, which shows all our code in the Explorer. So we can unlock that because we've completed this element as well.
Yeah.
And we can go down to, now we're going to start to review and test that code.
Yeah.
So now we've reviewed the code and we've had a quick look, which is what most of this does. Here it says that open up the program CS in the code editor. So the starter folder. So we open up the starter folder, click on program.cs. This is the code we've got. And then it says in the command palette, we need to enter .NET G to select generate assets for build and debug,
Yeah.
and then select the program to launch prompt, select starter. So if we do this, so we go, so select command prompts. So in the view menu, and we've got command palettes, which is there. Or we can use the, after using these for a while, you get very quick at using the keyboard bindings. Control-Shift-P is a keyboard binding that will do this. This will bring it up. You see, I've done this already, but if we type .NET, you can see all the .NET things you can do. I do a lot of Maui, which is the mobile application UI. So we can do Maui development in Visual Studio Code as well. But we want this generate assets for build and debug. We click that. It then gives you an element to select final or starter. You remember earlier when we were talking through the slides, I said that I had a problem with VS Code where I got to this step, and step 6, I couldn't get it to show select starter in the project like you could see up here. So if we go back to maps, I couldn't get it to show the starter. The problem is I need to go out to the debug and select automatic debug configurations, and then select the programming language, because I do a lot of programming in different things, Node and Python and things like this. I need to select C# to tell it, Visual Studio Code, that I was using C#. And the way I found this was after a bit of Google Binging and looking around, was on the Visual Studio Code docs. There was this no launch JSON, which explains why it can create the launch.json file. What it gave was a very cryptic error message. So it took me even, a few years of developing behind me, it took me a few moments to find what the error was. So if I take this and put it into the behind the scenes chat, I'm sure Anna and Katie will pick up on that and share it for everyone on all different channels, so you can see how to resolve this problem. But if we go back to it should work. There we go. We go back here and we can go back into the code, and if I just do that again, generate the assets, I'm going to select starter, which is the one we needed. And what that does is that creates a CS proj, and it also adds this .vs code and this launch.json. And this is so Visual Studio Code can understand how to launch your application and what to do for a build and how to use it and go through. Go back, and then this says to go through the code, which I've already done, and taking you through it, and explains, and it talks about the top level statements include read line and launch.js. We need updating before debugging. So we need to do this, and these note blocks in the magenta and purple blocks here are very cool, because they tend to be where exam questions are taken from. So they're always good things to know. Load till each morning and make change. We'll go through again, but looking through the codes and understanding the code is quite important before we dive into it too deeply. So we've come down. So now we've come down to running and start debugging. So if we go across to our code editor, we can run and debug, and we can use Control-Shift-D to do that. Or we can, from within here, we can
the next one, this
it's
one.
run there, and this is because I've got a really big screen, but I'm using it on a smaller screen. We can go start debugging, which is just F5. So you get quite used to just literally in your program.cs clicking F5, and it will run the code. You can see here it's now open my terminal, and it's running through and doing the build. And you can see here the version of MS Build it's using. I've got .NET 8 installed. So you can see the version of .NET I've got installed there, RC2, because .NET Conf is only a few weeks away, and we'll be using it soon. So you can see here, we're going through, it's now trying to do some things, and you can see we've hit a bug. So you can see here, we've generated an exception on this console.clear, and this is the exception that is shown. So this shows why we'd use a debugger, because this exception would have crashed the program, and the user would have no idea what happened and why. the console window would just collapse and close because an exception wasn't handled correctly. So an unhandled exception type system.io.io exception. So IO input output, so it couldn't input and output things. So that to me tells me why I couldn't clear the console. So why couldn't I clear the console? So we go back to the learn module. You can see here the debug console doesn't support console.clear and console.readline methods. You need to update the launch.json before debugging. So I wanted to show you that so you can see what an error looks like when you hit an error in your code. So on the debug toolbar, we need to stop. So the debug toolbar is up here, so you can hit the stop button there, or you can go to run and stop debugging, which is Shift F5. So I've stopped debugging, the debug disappears, and if we go back, it says use the Explorer to open the launch.json, and then we need to change the console line to integrated terminal. So I'm going to copy that code there. We go back to our Explorer, launch.json, and our console is there. It was using the internal console, which won't work for us. We need to turn it to integrated, which is integrated into VS Code, and we need to do that. See up here, we've got a white circle. That means that we haven't saved those changes. So I'm going to save that by using Control S. You can see now it's just turned to an X. So that's now saved. Now we go back to our program.cs and we click F5. It will now run our code. And we can run the codes. And it pops out to the console when it runs. There we go. You can see here, we can go to the, in the terminal, and we can see the very top, the till has 120, 100 in 20s, 110s, 105s, 50 and 1s. So we had the $350 we expected, and a customer's making a purchase of 6. You remember up in our code, the first test element was 6, and they're using a $120 bill to pay for that. So we return them a 10 and 4 1s, which is 14. So it adds up to 20. So now the till has $356, and expected till value is 356. So that's correct. If we go down to the bottom though, the last one, 351, 351. So that's correct as well. So it says press a key to exit. So now we've debugged, press the enter key, sorry, to exit. You can see it's exited out of the code, and we can see what's happened. So you can save the changes to launch.json. We've debugged, and we can see the fact it's working correctly. Exit out the application. Now we're going to identify and fix some logic issues. So in this task, we're going to simulate a transaction to expose a logic issue. So we're going to run with randomly generated transactions, change the value assigned to use test data to force. So find use test data near the top of the top level statements. So if we go out to our code here, when you've got a really big code file you're trying to find, we can see there use test data. It's not really what we want. But if we use Control F, we can use find. And if you've got something selected, it puts it into find. You can see it's in the 3 instances of use test data. And you can see we're on the second one. So we click down, that takes us to the third one. Click 1, takes us back to the top, which is actually the one we wish to use. So using the find will help you navigate your code a lot quicker as well. So we need to change this to false, which we'll do. And again, we need to save it. And now we've got that where we need to be. And then we need to review. I'm not going to show you the answer. We need to review what actually happened. So I'm going to use F5 again. And we'll build our code. You can see here now at the bottom we have transaction completed successfully, or successfully completed. The till has $451, but expected till value is $481. So that's not good. So either someone's taken money out of the till they shouldn't have taken out the till, or not enough money being put in the till. So there's something not quite right there, and we need to find what the error is. So if we enter to exit that as well, and go back to the learn module. You can see there, the values here are different. If you remember, we used a random with a seed. My seed is different to the person that wrote these learn modules. So obviously the cost will be slightly different. When you run it, will be different as well. Now let's debug our code. So near the top of the near the end of the top level statements, there's a console.writeLine with nothing in it, which just basically writes an empty line. So we go and find that. So if we give it this, so here's all our top level statements. We've got a while loop there. The while loop ends, and we've got a console.readLine, which is looking for that enter key. And there's our first method. So the console.writeLine is this one here. So what it wants us to do is set a breakpoint on that selected line of code. So what we could do is we could put our cursor on that line of code and set a breakpoint. But I find actually if you hover just to the left of the numbers, we can put a red dot there, and that is now our breakpoint. So we can go up to selection, and we can add breakpoints in there as well. And we've got toggle breakpoint F9 as well is another way of doing it. And you can new breakpoints. You can make conditional ones, which are only stop here if the number of the integer is above 10, for example. So loop for it really quickly and get there on the 10th one. We can add all sorts of breakpoints in there as well. You can enable all breakpoints, disable all breakpoints. If you've got 10 breakpoints in your code and you just want to see if it runs, if you've got a timing issue, you can disable them all as well. You can remove all breakpoints, which will delete all breakpoints in the code, because you've made that fix, you've pushed it in production, it's all working. So now we've got a breakpoint. If we hit F5 or do debug run again, we should stop by that console.writeLine. So you can see we've hit the breakpoint, and see the line has been highlighted. That's where we've got to. We can hover over our values, and we can see the values that are in the cache till. You can see we've got the first value is 49, and then 20 and 8 and 6. So you can see we've got to registered till total. So you can see it's very powerful. Imagine trying to do this with console.writeLine and trying to work out what is in each of the values. You'd be there for a long time. Registered check till total is 354. See, this is different to the last time we run it. It's different seed. So you can see here that the user made a $20 purchase, $4 purchase with one $20 bill, and we used a 10, a 5, and a 1. So that's correct. We returned $16 from a $4 purchase. So that's correct. So why is it that when we started with $350, we're out by $5? So something tells me there's something not quite right with the $5 in the making change element. So for me, I would then go and look for where we use that $5. But if we go back and look at the code, the shortage suggests that the cache to array has been updated incorrectly, even though the reporting is correct. So it's saying what it's doing, and by that I mean actually this section here is correct. So the cache here is going to return the correct change, but it's the updating of the till value which is incorrect. So the while statement used to making change. So if we look at the making change method, so we can step into that, and it goes back through. So you can see you've got your step and step over, or you got your stop, you got your replay. We can restart and go back to the beginning again. So if we go back to, if we just make this a bit smaller. So where we actually, so this is for the $20, this is for the $10, and this is for the $5. So we were $5 out. So if we look here, when we're using the $20, the $20 is the third element in our cache to array, and $10 is the second element in our cache to array. $5 is the first element in our cache to array, and remember that arrays are zero indexed. But when we subtract one, I've got friends sending me messages that shouldn't have popped up. When we subtract one, we are subtracting a 10, not a 5. So that element there is incorrect. It should be a 1. We change that to a 1 and save and restart a debugging session. while it's doing that, I'm just going to put my phone into airplane mode so I don't get lots of messages from my friends. We can see now that actually, if we make this slightly bigger, we can see now we've corrected that error. So you can see how we've gone through the code and stepped through and generated the error, and seen how we can use that to find that error and work out what it was. Obviously, I'd been through this, so I'd known where the error was. But if you go through the lesson here, it does explain it. But I just wanted to show you the errors as well. So you can see there where it explains you save your work and test it as well, and you should get a correct value as well. So that's that module complete as well. We go back to the top, and we can go to unit 4, which is the throw catch. So in here, we're going to talk about how we'd throw and catch exceptions. And
before we have a question, sorry, we have a question here. Once assets for debugging are generated, do I have to generate them every single time I change something in the code?
No.
No.
It's just on that very first, as it tells you in the learn module, on that very first, and I think they're talking about this section here, generate assets to build and debug. What that does is you need to generate on your machine, maybe Windows, Mac, wherever, you need to generate these assets or build on your machine, and it will create in the code, create this .vs code, which will then be correct for your machine.
Yes.
And it'll also create the bin and obj files, which are the outputs. So that's the starter.exe, which you can share with someone. They can run your code, their machine. And then you got the obj file, which is the object file, which is all the debugging elements. So all the parts that make your code run. So these are the bits that need to be created. But to do that, it needs this launch.json. So you just need to do it on the very first run of your code. And once you've done that, it will all work and you'll be happy. So great question though. But yeah, you just need to do it first time.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
the third part is about exception, right? We can maybe move to the slides here.
Yes. Well, I was going to run through the try-catch pattern, but if you wish to go to the slides, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, here. So while we use try and catch, here we focus more about the best practice of using try and catch, because we have different scenario to cover that require really exception handling. It's a way of handling an exception. When exception occur, we have data processing and computation, for example. So we have a lot of scenario, user input, file output or input operation. For example, if you would like to open a file and to be sure that we are able to read the file, the problem is related to opening the file, to access to the file. It's related to converting the content of the file, binaries, for example, or any other type. So it's really important to use try and catch. We have also some database operations, so we are able to personalize our exception related to these operations. Network communications. We have any other external resource to expect, for example, for REST API, for any other third-party libraries. This is a simple an example. We have your code block here. It's inside the try. You can do the catch, and we use also, finally, if you'd like to clean up really our resources, we recommend to use this structure if you want to use exception here. And exception are represented in code as objects, which means that they are instance of classes, which means that we are able to personalize also or inherit from an exception to create a new type of exception also. And to handle the exception, we use the catch here. In our case here, we have the catch. We can see the flow, how it works when exception occurs. The .NET runtime search for the nearest catch clauses that can handle the exception. So our process will start with a method that will cause the exception to be thrown. The method will try to check to see where the code that causes this exception inside the try the code should be inside the try. The code that will not be inside the try will not be considered if the problem comes from this code. So all the code inside the try will be checked by let's say, but the try, the way of trying to get thrown the exception. So this is the flow, the entire flow. This is the content about the third part, and how we can handle and call the stack. Inside the console application, the entry point always come from the top level statements. And if we use Visual Studio Code call stack, this entry point is referred to the main method. So the main method. So we start by the main method, and here is really a recap related to why we use try catch, how we use try catch, and how we can handle exception. Maybe we can go to see how we can add try catch. I see that the previous code that you already presented, I didn't see any try and catch,
Nope.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So if we I'm just aware we've only got 10 minutes left. If we pop
Yes.
back to my
Yes.
screen, we can add some try catch to our code.
Yeah.
So we're going to add try catch pattern to top level statements. So it's asking us to locate the make change manages section of our code. So if we go back out to our codes and we stop the debugging session, let's close that down, and up near the top we have the there is the element, I've forgotten what element it was, transaction message, string.transaction message, which is
In
there
in the
is so
yeah.
string.transaction
Sorry.
message line 80 is
Yeah.
what we're looking for. So take a minute to consider what the purpose of the code. So it's basically it's looking here and seeing what the return value is from make change. Did it succeed? And then put an error message out if it completed or didn't complete correctly. So we need to enclose the make change method in the try catch block. So let's put it in the try the catch after it. So we can put a try in there. So we can type try, and we can see that IntelliSense pops up. I want this one here. So if I select it with arrow key and hit enter, hit tab, it puts in what I want. And now if I select the line of code that I want and hold down the Alt key, I can use up and down arrows to move it up a few lines. And then I can use Control K, Control B, which is to prettify my code. You can do all these from the edit menu as well to make your code. But you can see here we've now got try the catch, and this is that horrible kind of catch-all that I said earlier, which we want to try not to use. See here we've now got a red squiggly that says transaction method. It can't find it. Doesn't exist in the current context. That's because we've put the creation of that variable inside the try block, so it doesn't exist outside the try block anymore. So we just need to be careful of that. I'm not going to edit that though, because we've not been asked to by the code. So now we need to update and make change to create and throw custom exceptions. So it's asking us to locate the change needed less than 0. So in the make change, we should have change needed is less than 0, which is line 136. And take a minute to consider. So if the change needed is less than 0, the customer hasn't provided enough money. So that's again where they're trying to buy a $40 item, they've only given you $30. So we need to work out which exception we wish to provide here. Remember, we talked about there's lots of them. So invalid operation exception should only be thrown when operating conditions of a method don't support the successful completion of a particular method call. So basically, it's outside the parameters of what we supply to the method. An argument out of range exception should only be thrown when the value of an argument is outside the allowable range of values. So really, it's not outside the allowable range because the allowable range is any integer number, but it's an invalid operation because you've not provided enough input for the operation to complete. So really, invalid operation exception is slightly better in this context. So what it's asking us to do is to change this change needed to throw a new invalid operation with an error message. So I'm going to copy that, go back to the code, and I'm going to replace those two lines with our error message, and that's now going to throw a I just did Control K, Control D again to prettify my code. So that's now done that section. And now it needs to say if change needed is greater than 0, and what this means is we need to give them more change than what we have in the till, then we need to change that block as well. So change needed is greater than 0, change needed is less than 0, and we want change needed is greater than 0, so line 169. Then we need to, again, it's an invalid operation, so we need to copy this code. So we copy this and change needed greater than 0, and we'll put that there. So now, instead of returning a string, we're returning an exception. So we want to complete the catch block now. So in the catch block, we want to catch any exception that is of type invalid operation exception, and use that as an error message that we're going to put out. So I'm going to copy that code. And if you remember, we were up here in our try catch block. So there's our catch block. So I'm going to replace that catch block with the code. Now, when we try and call the make change, if it throws an exception, one of those two exceptions that we just created, it will then catch it in this catch block. And instead, it will write out could not complete the transaction with the error message that we used, which is that error message here, invalid operation exception, not enough money if it's that one or the other one, which is lower down. So you can see how we're cleaning up the code and making it easier to read as well. But as you see on the make change up here, we've still got this transaction message that we call into, and we've still got some errors, and it's still not quite finished yet. So we need to convert the method from return the string to returning void. Void means nothing. So we need to go and get to the make change method, which is here. We need to change this string to void. And because of that, we now don't need to create that string because we're not going to use the transaction message anymore. And we can delete that as well. And then at the bottom of the make change message, we can delete them lines of code because we are no longer using them. So we scroll down, we see lots of error messages here. And so we can delete those as well. And then in the try block, we can move our transaction and register till totals into the try block. So we will go back up to the top and into our try block. It's this section here is what it's asking for. So it wants to move those inside the try block. So we can move again. I can highlight them, use the Alt key and up arrows, and just put them into the block again.
Yeah.
And because of that, we can now delete all of those lines of code, which we were using earlier, to decide based on a string, which isn't a good idea in code. It's always a bit of a code smell for me, making decisions based on a string. So now we can get rid of those there as well. And we've got an error message there. Can I please convert type void to string? And that's because we don't need to do that anymore. So we can delete that as well. And I believe that was in the a little bit further up. Yeah, we need to delete it there. Get rid of that. And now we can check our work. So to check our work, we need to find the while loop at the top level statements and change the transactions from transactions to 10. So at the top of the while loop, and int transactions equals 10. Int transactions
10. So you have all conditions here. Yeah.
There you go. It is 10 already. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Update number of transactions to 40. So I'm going to change it to 40.
40. Yeah. To be able to get together.
Yep.
The error.
The idea is to generate the error. Locate the line inside the while loop, value generator 20 at 10 and change it. Sorry, 2 to 20, 2 to 50.
No.
So 2 to 20, 2 to 50. Save that work as well. And then we can run the code.
Yeah. To get the output.
Click F5. And we just got a few minutes left, and hopefully we will see it generate some errors. If you do have any questions, put them in the chat, and we'll try and answer them by staying on
No
the call a little bit longer.
questions. I can see questions here. It's
Yeah.
fine.
So we see here we've generated an invalid exception, not enough
Yeah,
money
we can
provided to
see
complete
this.
transaction. That's because the till ran out of money. It
Yeah,
didn't have enough of the correct bills to create the error. We scroll up and yeah, so through an error there, and we've still got our debug in there. So that's why it stopped on that one. So we can click that to
yeah,
get rid of the debug and click run, and it will make the rest of the transactions. Till are unable to make the correct change because he's got $340 in there, but it's not correct.
yeah.
And you notice here that the till has got that many dollars, expected till value 986. So the till thinks it's got more
Mhm.
money than it actually has, and that's a bug in the code.
Yeah,
But that is in the additional learning, which is in the next module. So when you go down here, you can see there
yeah.
report
The
value.
last one.
And then if we go up to the very top and go to the summary
Yeah,
and knowledge
the
check
last
as well, and then there's a
one. Exactly.
next module which then takes you through how to fix that error. That's learning for you to try and work out how to do.
Yeah,
So I whiz
exactly.
through
And
that as quick as I could. Did we have any questions before we
time
wrap up?
is running very faster.
Yep.
And in the last project, we recommend to work to follow. You see that the instruction is really easy to follow, so you are able to see how we can add your code and how you can update your code, how you can catch, and we see how it's important to use try and catch, the debugger interface, the debugger tools, user interface, let's say, inside Visual Studio Code, simple to use. Please follow all the learning path to see the different features. We try to present that quickly, so to see the different features, how it works, how we add the breakpoint, how we can move from a section to another, how we can update, how we can add to try and catch. And the last part is, as I said, the challenge project. It allows you to have an idea about if it's clear or not using debugging. We know it's the responsibility of developer, tester. It gives at least let's say a quality to your code, and it make your life easier as a developer to fix and debug or specifically fix bugs inside an application. More we cover errors, more we are able to fix it.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
hopes
there's
that this
the challenge project at the end is to take the code and see if you can fix that error in the logic
yeah,
that we see right at the very end there of the till values being incorrect. It will walk you through how to do that, and you get 700 XP as well, which is really good as well. So I
yes,
really hope you've enjoyed this short kind of demo into how to use the tools
yeah,
in Visual Studio Code to debug.
yeah.
Very similar in Visual Studio, the grown-up version of VS Code
It's simple. Yeah,
as well. So yeah, and if you have any questions, do put them in the chat. And yeah, I think
the
that's
chat.
that's us
Yes,
time up.
thank you, thank you for
Yeah,
joining us
thank you very much,
today.
Hamida. And I
Yeah,
want
thank
to
you
say
for my
thank you for
discussion.
Anna and Katie in the background as well for helping out today. And I hope
Yeah,
you've enjoyed it.
yes. Have a nice day.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Bye.
Bye.